You guys watch combat jiu-jitsu at all?
Yes, I'm doing all the time.
I love the concept for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Tickets courtesy of you.
I saw Wagner Rocha even going for a bit of palm strikes and stuff like that. The referee warned him several times. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Combat jiu-jitsu was something that I was trying to start before EBI. And because of the strikes involved, you have to get the commission involved. And this was back in 2012. I did a couple combat jiu-jitsu matches in 2012. But the commission wouldn't let me do it outside of a cage. It had to be inside of a cage. It only because they weren't being dicks or anything. They just did. It was like a new sport, new concept. Yeah, they didn't. They were like, I don't know, outside of a cage, because in a cage, combat jiu-jitsu looks like pussy ass MMA, But on Abu Dhabi mats, on jiu-jitsu mats, in rash guards, and now the guys can imagine in Abu Dhabi, if in the finals you could do palm strikes. Amazing. Imagine how insane that would be. Yeah. Imagine how gangster it would be, right? So coming from jiu-jitsu, pure jiu-jitsu, CJJ is gangster. You know what I mean? But coming from MMA, it's like, oh, this is easy. So it's right there in the middle. It's one giant step closer to reality. The problem with the combat jiu-jitsu in the beginning, like I said, they made me do it in a cage. They said, okay, you'll do three 3-minute rounds. I wanted 1 10-minute round, but they go, no, we got to have 3 3-minute rounds. First, there was 3 2-minute rounds. And I'm like, whoa, 2-minute rounds, whoa. Let me at least get 3. So we tried it. We tried doing a couple special combat jiu-jitsu matches in a local MMA show, and as like a special match. Got mixed reviews, and I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna do sub only and not even mess with the commission.
Yeah, but why not do it outside of California? Is this everywhere?
You still have to get it sanctioned. The only way,
If any kind of strike, it's kind of considered.
So then I just decided, you know what, we're gonna do EBI then. So then it became EBI, and after like 10 shows, I went back to the commission. I said, can I do it now? And at that point, most of the guys in the commission are like jiu-jitsu guys. They're like brown belts and black belts.
You go.
So that when I went back, the commission was a big fan of EBI, like all the guys in there. And I said, can I do combat jiu-jitsu now, like outside of a cage the way I wanted it, with palm strikes, no gloves? They were like, hell yeah. They were so down. So at that point, I'm like, oh man, so let me start introducing combat jiu-jitsu through EBI. But that was combat jiu-jitsu was always the main plan. It was always plan A. Mm-hmm. EBI was plan B. So that's why now I'm going full steam with combat jiu-jitsu worlds now. That's now awesome. It's like, it's basically EBI, 16-man tournaments, still EBI OT, still 10-minute regulation, has everything EBI has, everything, except combat jiu-jitsu has a little turbocharger, and that's the palm strikes. Mm-hmm. And our next show is November 24th. It's going to be in Mexico, and
no need for a commission there either. So
there's no commission there, but we got a promoter out there who's like, we're saving a lot of money. We're saving a lot of money by doing it in Mexico. And plus, there's going to be... Our biggest crowd so far was when we were in Mexico for EBI 10. The place was packed.
Wow.
They show up. But here in L.A., because of all the rivalries between me and all the schools, it's like they boycott it. And we have small... we don't have big... They should be sold out. But there's... and I get it. I get... why the traditional schools are kind of shying away from EBI and kind of let's boycotted it for real. They for real boycotted it. It was like a silent boycott because it was all, and I understood because they were like, there's no guard passing, there's no mounting, everyone's just sitting back for footlocks, it's all just like a footlock sport and all that. And I get that, and I totally understand that. That's why I feel super confident that combat jiu-jitsu is the answer for everybody, because when you add strikes, now the mount all of a sudden has the power back, because the mount in MMA is huge. Start raining elbows and punches.
Everything has power.
Yeah. But in sub only, the mount isn't that powerful. You know what I mean? Because guys just turtle up, and it's like, fuck it, let me just jump on their legs, So it does become like some kind of leg lock battle. And if the mount isn't important, then guard passing isn't as important either. But now with the strikes, the mount's more important, which means side control's more important, which means the guard passing is very important. So the traditional jiu-jitsu practitioners should embrace combat jiu-jitsu. It's the way Brazilians used to train. Jean-Jacques Machado was on Joe Rogan's podcast not too long ago talking about combat jiu-jitsu and how Brazilians used to train, like after their training, they take off their gi and they start doing jiu-jitsu with palm strikes. It's called taparia. You know, so I didn't make it up. This is like how Brazilians train. So I feel that combat jiu-jitsu is the perfect jiu-jitsu style for everybody. You know what I mean? Because it's a giant step towards realism. You know what I mean? It's not a giant step away from realism by adding the palm strikes. We're getting closer to realism. So I didn't add the palm strikes because I felt EBI needed knockouts. It wasn't because of that. It's because MMA Jiu-Jitsu is still very theoretical. Everyone's got their theories on what works and what doesn't work in MMA Jiu-Jitsu. But we don't really see that much MMA Jiu-Jitsu anymore. Most fights are kickboxing battles, and it's so hard to take people down. So we don't really have the data on. It's still very theoretical. People will say all this stuff. Oh, when I play guard in MMA, and these are MMA fighters, I talk to them all the time. They said they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and I would do this and I would do that. But then when it actually happens, they didn't do any of that. You didn't do any of the stuff you were telling me about before your match. So it's all theoretical, you know, and and then there's stand-ups, they stand them up. So we're not getting that much data, right? So combat jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu data for MMA. You know, it's a niche audience. It's for people, we don't ever get to see MMA jiu-jitsu, only in the UFC, and that rarely happens. They discourage it. They stand people up from side control. In combat jiu-jitsu, we put them, instead of stand-ups, we have get-downs. So we only allow 1 minute on the feet wrestling. 1 minute. After a minute, if there's no takedown, flip a coin. We go top-bottom, just like wrestling, where they bring wrestlers top-bottom. We do the same thing. We put them on the ground. We get it. Wrestling's the best. Judo's the best. Muay Thai's the best. Kickboxing's the best. Boxing. We already got that. We see that. We have plenty of that in the UFC. That's what the UFC's become. 80% of the UFC is stand-up fighting. We see it. We get it. We need more data on the ground with what really works on the ground. Because in sub-only, everyone's like, oh, you can't do leg locks like that because you're in MMA, you're going to get knocked out. It's so unrealistic. Then I do combat jiu-jitsu. It's more realistic. What now? What is it about? You know what I mean? It's more realistic.
I love that idea, especially for our region, because it is the difference between, because jiu-jitsu is in our school systems now, and thousands of people are training. It's in the police force, it's in the military. Everyone trains jiu-jitsu now. So it's a good filter, I would say, or a transition for people who want to see if they want to do MMA. Not even like doing MMA, just wanting to do MMA. Yeah. Because if they don't like being hit in the face with a palm or a slap, then it's not for them, right?
Yeah.
So this is perfect for us. I know that for sure.
And the best jiu-jitsu players out there, most of them don't even have a thought or any interest in doing MMA. So we're never going to get to see the best jiu-jitsu players in realistic
scenario. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because if you are amazing at jiu-jitsu, but your striking sucks or your wrestling sucks, we'll never get to see it in the UFC. We'll never get to see all that talent in a real situation. But in combat jiu-jitsu, you can see that because, like you said, it's for people that are training for a career in MMA. But it's also for people that have already done MMA and now they're done with it and they just want to stick with jiu-jitsu with strikes. They can come down from that too. And it's for jiu-jitsu players that have no interest at all in ever doing MMA ever. Like Ben Eddy, he's one of my best combat jiu-jitsu competitors. He's never had any interest in doing MMA, but he loves combat jiu-jitsu because he's a big rubber guard player, and nothing gets altered in his game. When you play rubber guard, whether they're striking or not, it's the exact same hold, moves, sequences. Everything is exactly the same. Nothing changes. So Ben Eddy is perfect for that. He's a combat jiu-jitsu star.
Eddie, what happened to Gordon Ryan versus Fabricio Verdum? I think I saw that advertised.
That was going to happen, but then we had people financing that. That cost a lot of money, and then that sponsor kind of is not around anymore. So
who wins that fight, Gordon Ryan versus Fabricio in combat jiu-jitsu?
That's a good question.
That's
that's like a high-level elite.
That's why he
how about Buchecha and Gordon Ryan combat jiu-jitsu.
Oh man,
right? I want combat jiu-jitsu to be the thing people say where like when they get beat in the point systems, go, let's do combat jiu-jitsu now. How about in combat jiu-jitsu?
Because that's
like combat jiu-jitsu is the pro level of jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? There's points, gi, no gi points, judges, half sub only, half whatever, and then boom, and then
Combat,
now combat.
And then MMA.
Exactly.
Yeah.